This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. We are glad to have you with us this week. Congressman Steve Womack represents the 3rd Congressional District in Arkansas. He's been in House leadership since his freshman year after his 2010 election. So what better place to catch up with him than the U.S. Capitol this past week? I sat down for a satellite interview to discuss Paul Ryan, the budget, and Hillary Clinton. Congressman, a lot happening in Washington over the last couple of weeks, particularly when it comes to leadership and leadership change. Speaker Paul Ryan now is the Speaker of the House. How is he going to govern the House differently than Speaker Boehner? You've been very close to leadership all these years. I want to hear your thoughts on how it's going to be different.
And I believe I'm pretty close to Paul, too. In fact, I've had a couple of very private conversations. In fact, called me last night. But we have a lot of different conversations about a lot of different things. And so your question is, how's he going to govern? I think you're seeing an example of it right now. On the floor of the House of Representatives, we have an extension of the highway bill that is under consideration. And I want to say there were 250 plus amendments made in order. So to promise to bring regular order back to Congress, I think, is something that Paul believes in, and he's showing us some example of that just this week. But look, in all of his wonkiness, as we call it, Paul is also a gifted speaker on behalf of the values and the planks in our platform. He is, as you know, he went on the Sunday talk shows last weekend, did 5 of them. He is a tremendous, articulate spokesman for the things that are important to us. And I think if there is somebody in our conference who can unify the conference and put, as I say often, Humpty Dumpty back together again, it is Paul Ryan. And so I'm excited about his speakership, look forward to working with him.
All right, and you serve on the steering committee that actually makes a lot of the committee assignments, and I know that there is a big one that'll be filled sometime in the very near future on the Ways and Means Committee. What can you tell us about that?
Well, today at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, the steering committee of the House Republicans will convene in the basement of the Capitol, and we will begin the process of listening to the 2 candidates for chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. That's the tax writing committee of the Congress, and it's one of the more powerful committees in all of Washington. And you've got 2 guys that are competing to replace Paul as chairman. You know, when Paul became the Speaker of the House, he gave up his gavel at Ways and Means. So Pat Tiberi of Ohio and Kevin Brady of Texas will be the 2 people competing for the gavel of Ways and Means. So our steering committee will meet then, and then once we settle on the new chairman, then we will go about the business, because there will be another vacancy created with Paul's ascension to the speakership, that there will be an open seat on the Ways and Means Committee, and we will begin the process of filling that open seat as well. So 2 very important decisions affecting Ways and Means coming out today.
Well, let's talk about something that is impacted by Ways and Means, certainly impacted by the Budget Committee. You were the only congressman last week that voted for the budget proposal that cleared through the House of Representatives, and actually Arkansas's 2 U.S. senators even voted against their proposal over there. You said it wasn't ideal, but what was good about that budget deal?
Well, first of all, let me just say that in any major substantive vote, well, any vote for that matter, Roby, I always look at my vote in the context of if my position, if my vote were to prevail, then how could I explain the consequences of that particular vote to my electorate? That's how I handle my votes. I'm not one of these guys that looks for any kind of political expediency, never have, and I'm not going to. So in the context of the budget deal, I looked at it in terms of what did it do for the things that I think are hurting America right now, particularly in our ability to defend ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have taken, this sequester passed in 11 has taken dramatic, almost very draconian cuts out of our capacity to defend ourselves against a proliferating threat around the globe. So clear and first up was our ability to defend ourselves, and the men and women in uniform are very important to me. On top of that, I've never believed that defaulting on the credit obligations of this country, that is not passing a debt ceiling increase and paying our creditors, was going to be healthy for our economy. It shakes the markets, it creates a lot of uncertainty, the last thing that our economy needs today. Then on top of that, the fact that Part B increases in Medicare premiums are going to affect a number of people in my district and throughout Arkansas. The fact that our people receiving disability checks with the disability fund running out in 2016 and subject to nearly 20% cuts, I just can't see how those things were healthy for Arkansans and for our economy. So there's a give and take when you're dealing with these substantive votes. And again, I go back to this. My default position is, if my vote prevails, how can I explain it to my voters? And I just can't explain defaulting our debt or harming America's defense or hurting seniors was going to be good for our country.
Well, let me ask you this question. There will be a conference committee that will try to put the two chambers together. I don't know if you'll be a part of that conference committee or not, but what do you want to see reconciled? What do you want to see corrected or changed or improved through those conversations and negotiations?
Well, I doubt that I'm on the conference committee, but clearly what I'd like to see happen is I'd like to see, and this is one of the another benefit to the budget deal that I supported, and that is it puts the appropriators back to work. In other words, we're going to be coming up with an omnibus package that funds government from December the 12th through the end of the fiscal year, and we've already got those numbers. Those numbers provided for in the Budget Act give us the certainty that we're looking for so that the appropriators can actually do what the general public believes we should have been doing all along, and that is affecting our spending, controlling our spending. And from an appropriator standpoint, there are a lot of things that we have been unable to do from a legislative position, from an authorizing position, that we can address with policy writers and this sort of thing in our appropriations process. So above and beyond anything, I think it's important that the appropriations process work its course. We had done 6 bills in the House. We were working on the 7th when it got pulled because Harry Reid in the Senate said he wasn't going to bring an appropriations measure to the floor in the Senate, even though they had gotten through committee. So the breakdown in the appropriations process, I think, is harming Congress's ability to control federal spending, at least on the discretionary side. That's the first thing that I want to see happen.
All right, let's turn our attention to something that has gotten a lot of headlines. Big story in Politico, middle of the week, about the Benghazi Committee. There seems to be some debate as to whether or not to push forward with more investigations of the Hillary Clinton email server situation, or to let the Justice Department and the FBI continue its investigation of this. Where do you fall in that debate? Do you want to see oversight take more investigation on that particular issue, or are you advocating for patience and let the Justice Department do its job?
Look, with all due respect to my friend and colleague Jason Chaffetz, who is the chairman of the Oversight Government Reform Committee, Jason and I are great friends, work very closely on a lot of important subjects. With all due respect to Jason, I think this is clearly a Justice Department area. Roby, I think we get into what I often refer to as diminishing returns when you open up so many different pieces of investigations and have so much mission creep with all of these different agencies. There's been a select committee on intelligence review. There's been an oversight government reform piece of this thing. There's been, as you know, the Benghazi Committee headed by Trey Gowdy has done its part. There was a report that was done internally by the administration. So I mean, there have been multiple reports, and at some point in time, we've got to look at the responsible agencies. And in the case of the email server, I think that is clearly a Justice Department area, and I would just assume that we leave it to the Justice Department right now and focus our attention on the committees that we already have established, and let those committee chairmen run those separate investigations.